better strategic decisions that increase a company's profitability.
An ABC analysis will certainly give the manager of a business greater insight into the winners and losers in that business.
But you can think about the drivers of your business, you can measure the activities, you can keep track of yourself.
We're talking about a management tool, a tool to help us make the right decisions.
The activity analysis and process management is the future direction for this company.
Consider a hypothetical case, a pen manufacturer. At first, they produce a single product, blue pens.
Over a period of about 10 to 20 years, the company is now offering hundreds of different products.
During the same period, overhead costs increase dramatically, but profits fall. The manufacturer's cost system, however, has not changed with the business. It spreads overhead to all the products, just as it did in the days when they produced only one product.
This meant that a product like blue pens, which still represented 30% of the output of the plant, was being assigned 30% of the overhead costs. And this had caused these pens to now be a break-even or even a slight loss item. And the company was thinking of dropping this product because it can no longer earn money on it. Whereas the specialty products, which had a price premium associated to them, were getting nice margins. Purple pen, which was only 1% of the total output of the plant, was getting 1% of the overhead costs. Managers, when confronted with this situation, said, this doesn't seem right. Blue pens we've been making for decades, they're easy to make and require very little of this overhead and support resources. What the overhead and support resources are doing in the organization is spending a lot of time with products like the purple pens, designing them, doing quality control for them, and doing a lot of the special ordering and handling associated with the small lot production for the purple pen orders.
To provide the accurate information managers needed, the costing system had to change. ABC begins by identifying the basic activities performed by an organization, such as production changeovers, maintenance, material inspections, or creating a purchase order. There are hundreds of such basic activities. Each has a cost and each has a driver, or cause. ABC then links these activities and their costs to specific products.
In the pen factory, the managers discovered that blue pens were not using very many of the activities being performed by these support resources. And in fact, the cost of blue pens showed that they were now quite a profitable item, whereas some of the specialty products like purple pens were in fact not high margin products. These were unprofitable products because they were using a lot of the activities to design, purchase, produce, schedule, and sell them to individual customers.
Maplehurst Bakeries faced a business situation very similar to that of the pen factory. Maplehurst's principal product line is frozen, ready-to-bake products that in-store supermarket bakeries bake and sell fresh. Some of Maplehurst's products are standard and produced in large runs. But, like the pen factory, Maplehurst also produces dozens of short-run products. As their product line proliferated, Maplehurst's managers sensed their costing system was giving them distorted numbers.
Well, that's my feeling as well. I think somehow we have to figure out how to reconcile what the accountants are telling us and what your gut feeling is.
Surely the low-volume, short-run products used much more of Maplehurst's resources than did the high-volume standard products. But these variations were not reflected in the costing information. So Maplehurst's managers performed an activity-based analysis to get a more accurate picture of the true costs at their Essex, Ontario plant.
Our Essex plant is a very interesting plant. It is very automated in one end, and it is very labor-intensive at another end. The labor-intensive area has to do with products which we are really testing. New products, we haven't made a decision as to whether or not we should automate them. We don't know how big the demand is going to be. The other side is very automated and very high speed, and we have great quality there. So activity-based costings was a very important tool for us to apply because it was important to only assign to those so-called labor-intensive products, the costs which they were using, because they weren't using all that other overhead.
At the automated end of the plant, Maplehurst's managers realized they lacked sufficient understanding of the costs of the different production technologies. For example, the plant employed two freezing processes, one called spiral freezing, the other a high-speed freezing line that used large quantities of carbon dioxide.
This type of a freezing method was extremely costly as opposed to our other type of freezing method, which doesn't use CO2. And in the old system, these CO2 costs were being spread over all the products, even though most of the products didn't have anything to do with CO2. So when we took just the products that only use the CO2, we found a significant increase in the freezing cost and the overall cost.
The sharper picture provided by ABC of costs at both ends of the plant enabled Maplehurst's managers to make better operational and strategic decisions.
Today, we're running the Essex plant with a much better understanding of our costs. We know that we have improved our cost position, and we have a much better costing system, and frankly, we know where we still have to improve.
Maplehurst illustrates how activity-based costing provides a vital input to a company's strategy. For standard products like dinner rolls, Maplehurst had to be a low-cost producer. It needed accurate information about the cost of these high-volume products, uncontaminated with cost allocations from resources not used. But ABC information was even more valuable for Maplehurst's new differentiation strategy of offering unique customized products. With a traditional cost system, Maplehurst was unable to tell whether its differentiation strategy of offering low-volume customized products was truly adding value, or whether the strategy was a failure, subtracting value, because higher technology, indirect, and support costs for the new products were not being recovered by premium prices in the marketplace.
Maplehurst is a typical ABC application because it began in the factory. Many companies, however, extend ABC beyond manufacturing operations to other links in the value chain. Hewlett-Packard is a $20 billion supplier of electronic technology products. Traditionally, HP's product development process has created a succession of unique products that could command premium prices. However, as worldwide competitive pressures intensified, HP sought ways to reduce product development costs and shorten time to market. To this end, HP initiated activity-based costing at a plant in California and soon implemented it in other divisions worldwide. Managers in the test and measurement division quickly focused attention on the heart of their operation, circuit board design.
What we identified was that, as you might expect, the manufacturing process was probably the most efficient. After all, we'd spent 30, 40 years monitoring these guys to the fourth decimal point, so you would expect them to be more efficient.
Manufacturing could not overcome, however, inefficiencies dictated by design. For example, HP's product developers weren't fully aware of the high manufacturing costs incurred by the number of different components specified in a design. Nor did they realize that hand insertion of individual circuit board components could cost up to 20 times more than automatic insertion.
What we realized after we introduced ABC is that the R&D engineers had not been provided with sufficient cost leadership from the finance team that would help them generate products in a cost-effective way with an eye on what the production cost was going to be.
What's been the impact of this kind of information that they've been getting?
It's been really significant for us because this was part of a mind change that had to go on in our business. The requirement for the engineers to realize the commercial reality of life, that the output from their efforts needed to be commercially viable and successful for us. Technical innovation in itself that nobody wanted to buy wasn't going to get us where we needed to get as a company.
So it's really helping the engineers see the economics of the business and how the key decisions that they make contribute to the overall economic well-being.
Yes,
of the organization.
yes, I would agree with that. I think the other point I would have to make is that the engineers themselves very much appreciated the use of cost driver and ABC. It made much more sense to them than to look at the standard costs and the plethora of variances that we used to throw at them month on month that really didn't convey too much management information.
The revelations about circuit board production led Hewlett-Packard managers to re-examine their key business processes, such as new product development.
We had two thrusts. One, first of all, to understand the cost structure, and secondly, to identify how efficient we were within those processes. A weakness that we exploited within our organization was the fact that it was taking us too long to get through the product generation process.
So as long as they're doing something, the project manager's quite happy and oh great, another board cycle. But the emphasis now is really on, yeah, but this board cycle you're doing, the expectation is that it will be right.
And so we used the activity analysis to segment our design expenditure into a series of activities and take it from there in terms of how efficient were we in each of those segments of the product generation process.
So it sounds like you were taking what had been a functional department like design and development and saying what are the activities, what are the fundamental processes that are going on, and then you could get measures of cost and of time and perhaps even of quality like yields going through each stage of these design processes.
Yeah, when we analysed our cost structure, what became apparent that the traditional boundaries that exist between the functions, and the company tends to describe and segment its costs as the functions. What we realised is that when you look at the actual process and who contributes to designing a new product, there's contributions from marketing, there's contributions from manufacturing, and dare I say there's even contributions from the accountants. And so we are all part of that product generation process. And what we concluded, it would be far better to look at our costs on a process basis and attempt to identify what could we do better and get this time to market issue under control.
Global competition forced Hewlett-Packard and other technology-based companies to reduce manufacturing costs and shorten the time to market for new products. The activity-based analysis conducted at HP first revealed significant manufacturing costs that could be controlled only back in the initial product design process. The activity analysis also enabled HP managers and engineers to examine the cost and cycle time of the entire product design process. Cross-functional teams were now working together to achieve dramatic improvement in the critical success factors of cost and time. Hewlett-Packard shows how activity-based management integrates well with other change and improvement initiatives designed for manufacturability, cross-functional teamwork, and re-engineering of critical processes.
The linkage of activity-based cost analysis and business process improvement applies not just to manufacturing companies, but to service organizations as well.
BC Tel, directory for White City, please.
BC Tel Incorporated, with annual sales of $2 billion Canadian, provides telecommunication services throughout British Columbia. BC Tel saw the need for more accurate costing of its services and business processes because of the increased competition it faced from deregulation, a force which affects many service industries today, including financial services, healthcare, transportation, and telecommunications. BC Tel had operated for years on the assumption that they would provide every customer with every type of service.
Although your calling card calls are also timed in 6-second increments.
And government regulators established prices so that BC Tel's total revenues would cover all their expenses, plus an allowance for a return on capital.
Pre-92, before the industry really became wide open in long-distance competition, you could get by with knowing less. You could get by with having price structures that in fact were formulated not on the underlying principles of activity and costs associated with those activities, but broad averages. It was okay, it worked. It's not good enough anymore. We have to get more precise in our costs. We have to deliver the kinds of prices to our customers that they are willing to pay.
It was very clear with deregulation that we would no longer be able to serve every customer. What was not so clear was that we had no way of determining which customers were better for BC Tel than others, and quite frankly, which products would produce a better return than others.
And one of the things we determined we needed to do was better understand not just our costs, but the relationships of our costs to our revenues and to segments of our customer population. And we wanted to design the business, if you will, to suit what the customer wanted and within a cost envelope that we could in fact absorb and afford. So that's when we really got serious about activity-based costing.
BCTEL initiated its activity-based cost analysis with two objectives in mind. First, it wanted to determine the cost of serving different types of customers.
One of the things that we saw in the data was that not all of our customers behave the same or produce the same result. We found that in a couple of situations, certain customers were relatively the same size, relatively the same amount of revenue, but both contributed substantially different amounts towards the contribution to net income for BCTEL.
Second, BCTEL used the ABC information to identify high-cost internal processes, such as service provisioning, where redesign could deliver the greatest benefits.
Faxes I want away from the workstation, maybe over here in the...
Service provisioning basically is the interface we have with a customer upon completing a sale with them for a new product or service. Principally, our offering that we give to customers are services, but they do require physical installation work. So once that particular sale is completed, there's a number of activities now that have to be initiated to ensure that that service is put in a timely fashion for the customer.
We knew that process from beginning to end did touch an awful lot of people in our organization, from service representatives to engineering people to installation repair folks, that we knew that it was handed off many, many times.
And putting a cost measurement on it, we were finding it was costing us in some cases 3 times as much as we were charging customers to actually put in some initial services.
BCTEL redesigned the service provisioning process, centering it around customer service teams.
Oh, great.
You want it installed in 30 days.
We brought together many of the people that previously had been in different departments in different buildings that were part of the handoff process. We brought them together physically. That alone has resulted in significant reductions in handoffs and better communications and ultimately lower costs.
The West Coast project's ready?
Yeah, all 40 orders are out of engineering and they're ready for dispatch now.
Great, thanks.
The more you understand about your business, the more you understand about the costs of your business, the more intelligence you learn about your business from the data that is your cost accounting data, the better you are in terms of, being profitable. And that's what business is all about.
BCTEL, like Hewlett Packard, faced a new challenge in its environment. For BCTEL, it was the new competition brought on by deregulation. Deregulation brings such organizations into the competitive environment with a fierce jolt, forcing them to make hard decisions on services, customers, and process efficiencies. BCTEL used ABC analysis to guide its business process improvement efforts, to focus on the key customer and service processes that would be most critical for future success. The activity-based cost analysis guided executives' decisions about which services they should offer and to which customers. Without the ABC analysis, they could easily have made the wrong decisions.
Understanding the true cost of servicing customers is vital to service companies like BCTEL, and can be equally as valuable in manufacturing companies such as Kanthal Corporation. Kanthal is a Swedish supplier of heating wire to customers throughout the world. Its U.S. subsidiary, located in Connecticut, specializes in 2 types of products: heating elements for various types of industrial furnaces, and heating wire for household appliances. In the summer of 1989, Kanthal initiated its ABC analysis in the factory to determine the costs and cost drivers of its 2 very different production processes.
We knew deep in our hearts that we had 2 cultures. One culture being the appliance business with low margins, high volumes, very low costs, very low selling prices. The other being the furnace products division with very high engineering content and generally speaking higher margins. We knew we had this, but the ABC analysis gave us really proof, fresh insight into the two different cultures. We took our analysis and we used that as ammunition with our board of directors. And we explained to them how these cultures would flourish much better if they had their own separate factories. And we're able to split out into two different buildings, two manufacturing locations in Connecticut, and it's been very successful. Both divisions have done better after the split.
As a small supplier to large companies, Cantal also needed to know much more about the cost of its relationships with customers. This need became acute when one of Cantal's key customers, General Electric Appliance Division, announced a plan to reduce the number of its suppliers from 1,400 to just 200.
We are their prime heating wire supplier in North America. We wanted to remain their prime supplier. So in terms of negotiating and discussing with GE, we decided to use the insight we gained in our business through the ABC analysis with GE. It was David and Goliath, really. We were a small company and faced with this very skillful multinational company coming in, but they treated us very fairly.
Cantal's activity-based cost analysis had revealed that a major cost driver of supplying heating wire products was the changes made by customers to existing orders.
And we were able to explain to GE that this is a cost to you and to us, and we need to view it as such and charge differently when there's a change on short notice.
We actually tracked this through our system and developed cost drivers to determine what would these cost. We were amazed that a normal order would cost about $150 per order line. And if you put in changes, special requests, or things like that, it could go as high as $600.
Cantal took a calculated risk and decided to share this confidential information with its key customer. GE, at first shocked, soon discovered similarly high costs in its own purchasing procedures from every change notice they issued.
They were incurring similar costs in issuing us the paperwork, receiving the goods, etc., etc.
The experience with GE caused Cantal to look more closely at the profitability of every one of its customers. They found they had far more unprofitable ones than they thought.
One of the major impacts on the appliance business, the heating wire side, was to give us greater insight into how important volume was to the business. And you can attack the volume opportunity in many different ways.
Cantal worked with some customers to develop new shipping arrangements, larger quantities, and standard ship times. For some low-volume customers, they found it more efficient to work through distributors and subcontractors.
ABC has given us the ability to get really close to the customer, to share with them our costs which are incurred in servicing them, and then try to make the relationship more efficient so that their order pattern is less costly for themselves, and then in the end, we can be a better supplier, more cost efficient, and service them in the very best possible way.
We see managers at Cantal, like most companies, initially using information from the ABC analysis to improve manufacturing efficiencies. In this case, by creating two separate and focused factories. But Cantal soon moved beyond manufacturing efficiencies. Cantal did an ABC analysis of customer profitability and shared this information with key customers, an open book policy. Cantal used this information to increase both its own profitability and that of its customers, a win-win outcome.
Maplehurst, the frozen baked goods company, took activity-based management a step further with their customers by teaching customer staff how to use ABM to calculate the profitability of Maplehurst products in their bakeries. Sharing ABM methods with customers involved some risk for Maplehurst's managers. Supermarkets have never had a true picture of the profitability or unprofitability of their in-store bakeries. If ABC analysis showed their bakeries to be unprofitable, supermarkets might consider reducing their investment or discontinuing bakery operations altogether. That, of course, might translate into reduced business for Maplehurst.
So, based on that 739, we're looking at about 11% we need to allocate.
Maplehurst believed, however, that even if ABC analysis revealed unprofitable operations, they could use the information to help the customer improve operations and increase profitability.
And use that information to tie it into the profitability, which again is going to make another decision-making tool for you guys to make changes.